Boundaries. I've read a bunch of books on boundaries. There's like a book called Boundaries that I read through. It seems to me that there's a general definition of an established rule which when crossed results in X behavior. I think sometimes these books say that these need to be spoken. Sometimes it's pretty clear to me that that is not the most optimal scenario. In my experience, what I've noticed is that the first thing that you want to figure out in order to figure out what boundaries to set is your underlying value system. When you're able to figure out what your value system is, setting boundaries becomes really easy. If somebody, for example, cheats on you and you value honesty and truth, then you can go ahead and decide that that person is no longer for you and leave. Sometimes what happens is when we are not very clear about underlying value systems, we might still choose to stay, or there's something else that we value higher than truth. The only thing that I've really figured out that allows me to figure out what is and should not be is by getting my values tested through experience. I think a shortcut to try and avoid having to test all your individual values is sometimes to see the outcomes of other people. Should I take substances? Should I consume alcohol? How does that person's life turn out? I think everybody intuitively does this to some extent. We forget that this is something that we can do, that we can look at the outcomes of other people's lives and then see how that might affect ours. There is nuance. Yes, your life might be different. Do you want to bet that you might be different? Sometimes you would. Sometimes you wouldn't. Look, do not give up on your dreams. To really figure out your values so that you can establish boundaries, quite honestly, they do not need to be spoken. You don't need to tell somebody, don't cheat on me, to then choose to leave that relationship. You don't need to leave a relationship just because somebody cheats on you. That all depends on what goal are you trying to go towards. If the relationship is more important, then you might forego some behavior. If honesty is more important, then you might forego a relationship that could work out. It all depends on particular nuances of what you value and the kind of life that you want to live, that when you're in your deathbed, you don't regret. We all know what old people say. They all don't want to live lives of regret. They wish they would have done X. They wish they would have done Y. Let's take that knowledge. Next time you encounter a situation, you kind of want to ask yourself, does this really matter to me to the point where I will forego other values that I have? Sometimes this can get us stuck. If you need help with that, there's a link below where I help you figure out how to get free.